Hello, Helen. Welcome, sweetie. Good to see you.
Helen!
Hi, Helen.
Okay, I'm recording.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Does that mean that we're starting?
It means we're starting.
It means that you should know that anything you're going to say right now will be recorded. So that's all.
Okay. Welcome, beloved, to our gathering.
Hey, Shantae's here.
Hey, Shantae.
Well, hello, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. We did a series on archetypes for a few weeks, and that was super fun, and we're planning to do more with that. But we thought
it was fun.
Right? I mean, and we have like the pipe cleaner puppets, which, come on, Sam, this is good stuff we were doing.
Not every day you get that.
And we wanted, though, to start a 4-week series on the idea of embodied spirituality. And we thought that it would be good to use this week to just sort of introduce the topic and riff on that. And then each of the following 3 weeks, we'll settle into one particular aspect of embodied spirituality. The 3 aspects being breath and 2 other things that Tracy's going to remind us.
Body and play.
There it is. Breath, body, play. Not breath play, which I thought had like a whole different suggestiveness to it. But if you add "and" before it, then it takes some of the sexual saltiness out of it. We're recording. Okay, so let me just...
Never stop this usually, so that's fine.
That will not make a 1-minute edit, what you just said.
I do our editing, so I can edit out sexual saltiness. I'm going to do a screen share real quick. And... just by way of introduction, so just so you know who we are, we have a collaborative called Women Leading, and we had originally intended to have a retreat in person in June. You may have become aware recently of a global pandemic, and because of that, we canceled the in-person retreat, but we are doing some sort of online gathering instead. So you can go to our website, womenleadingretreat.com, and learn a little bit more about that and sign up to hang out with us in June. If you like our Thursday hangouts, we do that, but better and more. So also today is an exciting day because all of us are now officially have an online presence. So I would like to just let you know that Jenny Hall now officially has a website. The website is jennysliving.com, and let me just show it to you because it is so wonderful. Hello, can you guys see that? This is Jenny's website, and it was designed by Tracy G herself. So if you yourself are thinking, but I could use a website, well, look at these retreats that Jenny is leading. So beautiful. Look at this web design. So good. Plus, if you want to join any of Jenny's online classes yoga classes that she's teaching, you can find out about that. Look at Jenny just doing it online right here. So anyway, I'm so proud of both Jenny and Tracy, and that now you can find Jenny on the internet as well. So it's so awesome.
Joined the age of the internet.
It is here on the World Wide Web.
For her.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, I was still like let's meet up at a coffee shop and I'll tell you what I got going on. That was my social media. Let's have coffee and I'll talk to you.
So as by way of introducing this topic, we were just going to start with a little bit of storytelling. And I wanted to pass it to Jenny, who's going to do some bigger picture setting the frame for us. And then Tracy's going to do a little bit of storytelling from her own life just to help us dive in. And I love that you guys are giving us some chat here. And if you relate to things that Jenny and Tracy are sharing, then of course, please throw your comments into the chat, things that you connect with, things that you relate to. So let me pass it to Jenny. Would you kick us off and give us some categories for thinking about this?
Yes, I will, Erna. I'll give you some categories for thinking about this.
Thank you, Jenny,
for passing it. I've been writing a paper the last couple days, so my brain is a little not at its sharpest. So I definitely have props again today. I hope that's okay with everyone. So I just want to talk about this idea of embodiment and what it means, and how we have left a sense of embodiment in Christianity, and I think are trying to find that again. So in the pre-modern world, like let's say pre-industrial revolution, God spoke to people through dreams. People sensed things in their body. They worked from their instincts. That's how they knew stuff. They carried on the history of their people through stories. They had shamanic medicine people that were the healers. They didn't have, antibiotics. So there was a very holistic, very embodied way that people did life. And so I have a little body here that Scott made during sabbatical a long time ago. He used to have feet. He used to have an arm. He's a little battered and bruised. He's got a nice little butt there. This is a sculpture that Scott made, and actually it's of himself. So you can kind of see how he chiseled some of and this is a lot of popsicle sticks, I just have to say. So I think in the pre-modern world, pre-industrial revolution, we were just connected with our bodies. What started happening though, particularly in Christian circles, is there was an intersection of Martin Luther and the Reformation, the Industrial Revolution, and the Enlightenment. All of these things happening at the same time, or more or less at the same time. So we went from this embodied space, like the body is the primary place of knowing, with the Enlightenment saying, no, actually your brain, and here's a brain. Can you see that it says right and left? No, our brain is actually the primary way that we know things. So does this one say left, or can you not see? Okay, it doesn't matter. You can know left and right. So all of a sudden we had the answer to things. Science told us how things worked. And so that's one thing. We didn't need to trust our bodies because the brain had the answers. And then also we started relying on machines to do the work for us. So we didn't need to be connected to our bodies. We had these machines that were working for us. So all of that's happening. And then at the same time, we have Martin Luther, who's upset about the Catholic Church saying the only way to know God is through the priest. And he's trying to level the playing field and say, no. Everybody gets to know God on their own accord. And that way is through the scriptures, sola scriptura. So he posted that, was it 95 Theses on the door of the church. So you had what happened with Martin Luther is he's saying, no, the word is accessible to everybody. But because of focus on the brain, because we were getting into a mechanistic way of being, what started happening in Christian circles is the word became the only way to know God, the primary way to know God. Words, friends. It had not existed like that for centuries before, but all of a sudden, words are the primary way to know God. And not only that, the body starts becoming suspect. The body is not trustworthy. The body does things that smell, that we don't feel like we have control over, that start feeling we call dirty and shameful. So we start cutting ourselves off from anything that our body wants to tell us, and we just start relying on our brain. And I'm talking, this is true for the modern world in general, but specifically for Christians. So I was talking to Mike about this last week, and I was saying, not only did we start narrowing an experience of God just to the brain, but we started narrowing an experience of God just to the left brain. So I'm doing it, which I'm hoping mirrors you. On the right side of the brain, it's primarily responsible for intuition, dreams, creative thoughts. It's very circular in how it thinks, or serpentine in how it thinks. There's not necessarily, linear logic is not its primary impetus. Imagination is here. And then on the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, I couldn't find another thing. I was looking for a ruler. All I could find was a calculator. It's logical. It's linear. It's numeric. It's calculating things. And both of those things we need in our brains. We need both. what started happening in the Christian church and in the modern Western world is that the right side, I'm opposite of you, so now I'm getting confused. The right side of the brain started becoming less and less important. So we started squeezing that out, and we just said, actually primarily it's the left side of the brain that's the most important. That gets the job done, that produces things, that makes things happen, that moves things forward, that is trustworthy, reliable. We can have a sense of control with that. We can read it, we can bind it in a book. And the left brain, or the right brain, I'm sorry, started becoming less and less and less important. So there's a book called The Master and Its Emissary. And that's basically the premise of his whole book, is that with the dawn of the Enlightenment, Reformation, Industrial Revolution, the left brain became dominant and the right brain became its emissary. It's just a little servant that does things here and there. So that's kind of a bigger picture. And if we need to ask a couple questions, we can. But does that seem like it gives enough of a lay of the land? Yeah? So that's kind of where we find ourselves, I think, today.
Nice.
Yeah, Master and Its Emissary.
Right in there. Thanks, Roxanne or Scott Hall. So thanks, Jenny. I think that's a very helpful I think as you describe that, I think a lot of us it interprets things that we've experienced, as we've been in Christian spaces and in evangelical spaces, if those are contexts that you're in. Tracy, I think you have some just more like stories of how this has like then played out in your own life. Do you want to jump in with us there?
Yeah, a couple quick stories. Jenny, I love the calculator and the painting. That's really nice use of props again. I had two stories that I have been reflecting on as far as like my getting pulled out of what Jenny just described, that like we live in the left brain, and nothing for me personally has done that as much as parenthood and being a mother. Like it just has forced me into my body. So I remembered two things. So one was when I was first becoming an area director, I was talking to a friend and I was saying, her name was Jen Ball. And I was telling her, yeah, I feel like God is calling me to be an area director in spite of being a mother. That was how I phrased it. And she was like, whoa, 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 not in spite of, because of. And I thought that was such an interesting, such a revealing thing, that I was like, oh, in spite of this, in spite of the fact that my body has these limits, I need to attend with my physical self, like to the nurturing of this human being, like that must mean that I can't do all the things, I can't be the leader that I sort of think of as like the main way to be responsible with that. And she was like, no, it's because of. So your calling is actually meant to be held in the body that you have. Those are not separate things. So I think, so that was the first experience, sort of example of like feeling the limits of living in a body. The second one was also related to motherhood, where when my second son was born, his name's Ryan, I was in the hospital with him, and they monitor all the vitals of the babies and the mothers, and his body temperature was cold, and that's concerning because I think it has to do with breathing or whatnot. But the way that they first tried to resolve that was they wrapped him in extra blankets and they placed him under these machines that are specifically, I don't think they call them heat lamps, but that's the only like word that's coming to mind. So, like a heat lamp for a baby, like they stuck him underneath it. But the nurse kept coming back in and saying like, it's not working. Let's try this. Let's turn it up a little bit. And finally a different nurse came in. She was my favorite. And she was like, you know what, this is the better thing to do is actually take off all these blankets, take off his onesie, take off your shirt, and just have him lay to you skin to skin. And what I learned later, which I didn't know at the time, was that as the mother, my body holding him next to me would automatically be able to sense that his body temperature was too low, and what my temperature would then rise in order to heat him up. Like without me being conscious of it, my body was capable of knowing that for him and then doing that, to the point where the nurse had to give me like ice packs to like cool me back down, because they were like, uh-oh, she's going to start registering a temperature, and then that kicks you into a whole other set of things that you don't want, right? So she was like, oh, let's stick ice packs under your armpits, like lower your temperature. But like my body was physically able to do that. And I think that was one of the most visceral experiences of realizing, oh, the bodies that we have been given are really kind of magical and amazing. And I think when we say like Psalm 139, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, I think we use that to teach on like, yeah, your culture and your personality and, you know, the gifts that you bring into leadership, those are fearfully and wonderfully made. But we don't also then think about how it's also our physical bodies, our physical selves. Like the fact that my body knew how to do that without me saying anything or telling it to do anything or doing anything conscious was really powerful. So I think I've just been thinking about that and how then weird it is that we find ourselves in this place like Jenny was describing of disassociating from that and distancing ourselves from that, or thinking that the realm of spirituality is like only in words and in our left brain.
I love that. So amazing. I think it's just interesting that the world we live in, the instinct is like, I'm sure this machine is going to be able, right? There's such an instinctive trust, even like medicine, which is about the body. It's the trust is like, you know, put the baby under the baby heat lamp, versus trusting your own body, which like just created that little human and brought it into the world. But there's just this, there's what we trust. And I think that's part of what I want to talk about a little bit is like how we're surrounded by theologies that have actually become like theological explanations for why we shouldn't trust ourselves and our bodies, and particularly the ways that that plays out for women, people of color, overlap those for women of color. I wish Jenny also shared a story about when she had her twins and when they were separated and together. And it's just the similar idea of like, the bodies have like, there's a mystery to like the healing and good that they can bring. I think particularly as a woman, if you've grown up in Christian spaces, like no one, well, maybe you did grow up in a space that preached explicit sermons, but the subtext is like women's bodies are sort of dirty, sort of smelly, and God forbid you have sex, because then they're like a piece of chewed up gum that has been spit out and can never be unchewed, because virginity is like the most special thing about a woman. And I just want to reinforce that that's true. No, I'm just playing. This idea that like what is valuable about a woman isn't anything about her character, her obedience to God, but it's just simply this one act that she doesn't do is ridiculous. And that also that we have to be so suspicious of our bodies, of desire, of sexuality, and particularly like female sexuality is something that has to be like contained, controlled, and brought into submission. And there's a lot of theories about like where this comes from, but at least one aspect of it is like this preoccupation with virginity is, you know, the thread that goes back to like clarity about paternity, right? Like you can be pretty sure that like a woman's having your baby if she's never had sex with anyone before, and you want her to have your baby because you want your heirs to be the one who get your land and resources. And so some of the preoccupation around like female virginity and like containing female sexuality really always has to do with male patriarchy, right? It has to do with ownership. It always has to do with ownership, and it always has to do with economics, right? If you're just like, where did that oppression come from? Comes with white men staying rich and powerful. Ta-da! A new theology has been developed. So that's like around, for women, we're told to mistrust that our bodies can't be trusted, and that our bodies are suspicious and sort of like uniquely sinful, and that our instincts, by byproduct, our intuition is also suspicious and sinful, and that we like shouldn't pay attention to our gut instincts. And so that's one circle. Then let's overlay this with white supremacist anti-Black theologies that developed. So there's like, I'm about to condense what could be 800 different books on this, but just a thread of the conversation is in the 1600s, people in England are like, hey, you know, you have all these people that you've enslaved, you should try to convert them. And so you have these people in the colonies in the United States who feel like, oh, we have a missionary responsibility, but we also have an economic priority. So how do we fulfill our missionary call as Christians while keeping these people enslaved? And what they did was create a theology that was basically like, we can convert people's souls without having any responsibility for liberating their bodies. And beginning to tease apart this, like, as if you could, because what would happen if you were a Christian, you could sue for your freedom. And so they needed to separate that out. And so it was, they began to create a theology that was like, you can fulfill your missionary purpose while utterly committing violence against these enslaved bodies. And that is not a conflict Christian-wise, because you've fulfilled your missionary purpose. And by separating the two out, you can still basically commit incredible violence against these people. So then you can also imagine the overlap. Let's imagine then if you are like a Black woman, right? If purity and virginity is something that belongs to white women, then white men don't need to feel concerned about like raping Black women, because they don't belong over here in the purity sphere. They belong over here in a place where their bodies can be violated and used for economic gain without any, like, your conscience being concerned. And so I think what's important to realize is, like, there's the Enlightenment frame that Jenny is talking about, and then there's this white supremacist frame that particularly now continues to exist, so that when violence is committed against Black bodies, that people can somehow say that's not something that we as Christians should be concerned about, as we see happening right now, all the time, every day. Mike's dealing with, in his city, this Black man who clearly was having a mental health crisis was murdered by the police. And when violence is committed against Indigenous bodies, there is no accountability for that. And when violence is committed against female bodies, right, that there's somehow this separation, that you can still be in alignment with Christian theology while committing great violence against people's bodies. And so not only is it it's breaking us from being integrated, like Tracy is talking about, like a beautiful example of what integration can look like with what our bodies can do. It also, that separateness becomes a justification for great violence against people. And we're still living under that legacy. And similarly, just what happens is racism has people mistrusting, like it has doctors mistrusting what Black folks say about their body. And it has the church denying what queer people say about their bodies. And it has women seeing their bodies as shameful, as unclean. Like, it's led to such toxic harmfulness. And so part of why we want to sit on this for a period of time is to just begin to, if we use the breath image, like, let's exhale out some of these toxic theologies that have, like, pressed themselves into our spiritual heart, soul, and mind, and begin to breathe in something else. I feel like even just describing it, right? There's like just looking at your faces, we went from like Tracy's story where it's like, to like this, to like, because you feel it and you know it's true, and you feel that it's been into ourselves, and we just can, even right now, just inhale and exhale it out. Because we name those things to name them as the toxic lies that they are, right? We name them to say that that's a false train of thought that's been used to create so much harm and dehumanizing. And so we want to take the next 3-4 weeks to breathe in a different way of being and a different way of coming at it. And so that, I think, will be, I want to just share one quote. So by contrast, as an invitational way to be, and then I'm going to pass it to Jenny, who will kind of take us through a little bit of a breath integrated exercise. Let me share my screen and take us to here. So this is a quote from a book called Native American Theology. And what we see in the theologies I was just describing is so much hierarchy. This is talking about an indigenous Christian theology. It says there's no hierarchy in our cultural context, even of species, because the circle has no beginning or ending. Hence, all the created participate together, each in their own way, to preserve the wholeness of the circle. When a group of Indians form a circle to pray, all know that the prayers have already begun with the representation of the circle. No words have yet been spoken, but the intentional physicality of our formation has already expressed our prayer and deep concern for the wholeness of God's creation. There's no need to hold hands because we know it is enough to stand in the circle already joined together, inextricably bound through the earth which lies firm beneath our feet, the earth who is, after all, the true mother of each of us and of all creation. And I love this quote as like an exhale. What we're talking about, like patriarchy is creating a hierarchy around gender. White supremacy creates hierarchies around race. You know, it's like a homophobia, heteronormativity creates hierarchy around sexuality. And this, I love this image, is a circle, right? Stepping outside of those toxic hierarchies into, even with creation, we're not in a hierarchy with creation, but we all participate together. So I think that can be an opening frame of moving from hierarchies to circle. So that's me. Yes, and yeah, Sylvia, I'll post that quote up to my Facebook page and to the book. Yeah, so Jenny, can I pass it to you off of that, or did you want to say anything before we pivot to your breath exercise?
No, I think we could end, and then if people want to keep talking, we can go into the 4:30 time with those thoughts. One last thing as we enter into this body exercise is also just that the body doesn't lie. Like I can tell myself, oh no, I'm totally not anxious at all, but then I have these massive stomach cramps, you know? And I also think our bodies talk to us and how we interact with the physical world around us. I've been super frustrated by the state of things, the state of the country. And in the course of 1 week, I've hit my head hard 3 different times. Here, and then I have a bump here, and then I fell off something yesterday and hit my head, and I was like, what is my body? What might my body be trying to tell me? And I feel like I'm hitting my head against a wall. Like I feel like I can't get through. So I'm just saying, like, there's your internal body is going to be truthful, but how your body interacts with the world is there's a whole symbolic realm to explore there as well. So just to close off this time, sit nice and straight. And then you're just going to put your hands, so your palms will be up, but your hands are going to be on your knees. You're just going to take a deep breath in and then roll your shoulders back and down, exhaling. So inhale, exhale it out. One more time. Good. And exhale out. And then you're going to do a little self-massage. So putting your hands right here on your traps and just give yourself a little massage. Oh, that feels so good. And then you're going to use kind of the edge of your hands to go up your neck a little bit. Oh, Josh is joining us right as we're doing the self-massage. You're going to give a little traction to your neck. So just a little kind of pull up. Woo, and then work it back down. Nice. And then find yourself on those traps again. And one more time, up the neck. Give yourself a little lift. Good, go down the neck. Back to those traps. Good. This one's gonna feel weird at first. You're gonna find kind of that little ball that's right here in your shoulder girdle, and you're just gonna rub it, just a few little circles around. Good, and then you're just gonna take that arm and make a few circles, or if you don't have room, you can just put your hand in your shoulder. Good. Breathing as you go. And then the other side, same thing. Just opening that up. Good. So it's kind of like right here. And then move that arm around, or circles here. Good, and then you're gonna clasp your hands up at the top of your head like that. And you're just gonna bring your body forward. So your chin's kind of hugged into your chest. And then I want you to start finding your breath. So you're gonna take a big breath in, and then a big breath out. A big breath in. Good. Big breath out. Bring those arms up one more time. Then a big breath out. And then a big breath in. And then just let those hands float down. Bring your right ear to your shoulder. And then your chin to your chest. Your left ear to your shoulder. And your chin to your chest. And then lift the chin up, keep the eyes closed, and take a deep breath and inhale. Pause at the top. Exhale it out. Pause at the bottom. Again, inhale. Pause. Exhale. And keep with that cycle. Just pausing at the top, finding a little peace, a little refuge at each pause. And then just ask your body, take a risk. Body, what are you telling me? And see if it answers. And then with your mind focused on that part of your body, take a deep breath in. Just acknowledging, I've got you, I see you, body, I'm with you. Exhale it out. Body, you can let go. Big breath in. Nurturing yourself, holding that part of your body. And then let it release, exhale. And Erna, we're ready for the closing image.
Thank you. So we're staying in a reflective posture. We like to end with just a closing image to reflect on. And this will be our closing image. And I just wanted to take us into this image with actually something that Tracy said that I felt like might be just an anchoring thought we need to come back to, which is your calling is meant to be held in the body you have. And this is our closing image. So just, we're going to sit silently for a little bit and just take some deep breaths and just sit with whatever is speaking to you from our time. Take one more deep breath. We just, peace be with you. We're so grateful for you to have joined us and given us some of your time. We like to do an official close at this point so that those of you who need to go, you can just feel free. Those of you who like to linger, we usually hang out and have a little more conversation until about 5. So if you want to keep hanging out with us, feel free. If you need to go, we're so glad. We're so thankful that you hung out with us, and just throw any things you want to keep talking about into the chat, things that you were connecting with. Different. I think, Jenny, it'd be fun as we head into this time to share the story about what happened with the twins, because I think it takes us back to some of your own experience with that. Is just another snapshot. Do you mind? Is that okay?
No, I don't mind at all. Yeah, so I had twins. When Lucy came out, she inhaled a bunch of amniotic fluid. She was like, and then gave this huge, like, true to form even today, like, scream. And before I even got to hold her, I heard the nurse saying, oh, she looks really dusky, like something's not right, which I was like, dusky doesn't sound good. So they're like, we need to take her to the NICU unit. I got to hold Lucy for a hot second, like 5 seconds, which is nothing. And then she went to the NICU unit. I had Tyler to take care of. And because I had a C-section, my legs were numb for about, I don't know, 15, 18 hours. So I couldn't go up to see her. So Scott would go up to be with Lucy and hold her. But she just wasn't getting better. She was only eating like an ounce of bottled milk. She just, when I finally got up to go see her, she just looked kind of out of it. And the nurses were like, something's really wrong. We don't know what's happening. And Scott kept pushing, like, why don't you just let her come down a floor and be with her mom and see how that goes? And they were very like, no, we're not going to do that. But I happened to be in the hospital during Mother's Day, and Scott went up and worked his little Mother's Day, dad magic. And the nurse was like, okay, fine. We'll let her we'll go down and we'll see how that goes. So I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on the little bed with Tyler, and there was that Jack Johnson song playing, It's Better When We're Together. Na, 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 my heart, that song. And Scott scooped Lucy out of this thing and put her on the bed. And guys, her face went from like this to like a smile, like her eyes lit up, and she was with her brother and she was with her family. And the nurse herself was like, oh, she just missed her family. She just wanted to be connected. And if you think about being a twin, she was with somebody for 9 months, not to mention inside of my body. So to be ripped away from that and put into, and they were trying to look out for her. I don't feel mad, but to be put into something where there's needles poked and you just have all this stuff around you and up your nose, it doesn't feel safe, certainly. But for her to be reconnected and physically connected with her own little body to her brother and to her mom, transformed her.
I just love that. I love that story. And I think one of the things we were also talking about on the flip side is like in our disconnect with our bodies, like people release studies like it's, they're like, hey, did you guys know that if you experience lots of racial trauma your whole life, that it causes stress on the body? And I just want to be like, no kidding, right? But there's such a like as if you need a study to tell you that like,
right.
Consistent trauma is going to cause hypertension, or like that if you have constant anxiety, like you carry that in your stomach. And sometimes it's like, we're like robots, like, oh, like my body and trauma and healing are all connected. And so we don't, and not only that, we're just taught to be suspicious. You know what I mean? Like, integrating your body into worship is like, well, it's going to get fleshy real quick. I don't know what they think is going to happen, but we're always just like one bad move away from an orgy, so I just, so much anxiety. Like what I love about Tracy and Jenny's stories is actually being connected to body could be such a source of healing, and being gentle with our bodies and understanding the amount of care they need is integrated with our healing.
Right. Which is, I think, is partially what's interesting about the season that we're all in with the pandemic is like, oh, wait, this affects our body. Like I think people are being forced to be more aware of that. But usually it's kind of like, oh, shoot, if I'm tired, that must mean I'm like, there's something really wrong with me, or that's like, there's like a moral judgment on yourself for that. Like, oh, that's bad. I'm bad because I'm tired, And I think with this, everyone's like, oh, maybe like the stuff that we go through like actually affects our bodies too. We should think about that and take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. Helen came back.
What are you guys thinking about? Throw some of your thoughts, things you're pondering, things you're connecting with, things you want to chat about more into the chat, or you can hop in and throw a question into our conversation. Or you can judge us. I mean, we're just open to like all kinds of interaction that we're having here.
When you
let's see.
Yeah, that's true, Jenny. Could you unpack that? Because I found that really interesting and intriguing, but also a different way of being.
Yeah, it is a different way of being. It's a more intuitive way of being, and you kind of have to let go of logic for a moment, because you are assuming that your musculature and your bones and your nervous system has voice. So it's weird. It's definitely weird. When I experience it for myself and I kind of just relax into my body, usually there's something that will get my attention, whether it's a clenching in my stomach or a tightness in my jaw or a palpitation in my heart, or I find that like for a while I just was like my arms were full of a lot of tension. So if you just listen to that part of your body, like arms, what is it? Maybe your arms say, I'm feeling like punching something. Oh, what do you want to punch, or why do you want to punch? And you kind of just ask your body. It might have answers that go like in a body wisdom kind of way, that go beyond what you're consciously able to articulate. Does that make sense? Ask me more about that, because I know
in some ways
abstract.
no, but it does make sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, it doesn't make sense. And yes, I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay,
you know,
got it. Yeah.
I think similarly,
Yeah.
I used to do like a hot yoga for a while when I lived in LA. Why did I do it when I lived in like such a hot part of the country? It's not my favorite kind of yoga, but what I noticed for me was at the end, where you're like laying in Shavasana, where I would often start crying, like just tears would come out. And when I do like longer sessions, and I mean, yoga in its original purposes was like to help you pray. But it was interesting because something about moving my body that way would like kind of access and surface emotions and trauma that I hadn't been able to like process in any other way. And then it just sort of like got past all the brain things that were shutting it down. And so that was just always such an interesting experience for me. I wouldn't go in thinking like, oh, I'm really sad about something, or I need to process this. But as my body was given permission to move, like it just started to release something.
Mm-hmm. Scott was bringing up, I don't know if you guys see it in that. Scott, do you want to just speak to it? It's a good question or a good comment.
Well, I'm drawing a parallel where there's a bias toward the voices of white men. And I just realized I'm not going to have an accurate picture of reality without women's voices and folk of color. And I wonder if there's an analogy there that we've all been sort of like the white supremacy. We have a left brain supremacy that we've been indoctrinated in. So we actually have to elevate the body voice, not because it's more important, but because it's been more silenced.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think something I was going to share was that when I asked myself the question of like, body, what are you saying to me? I feel like the only way I listen to my body is through pain. Like, I feel like that's the communication that I know, right? It's like, oh, my ankle hurts. Like, thanks, body, you're communicating. But I wonder, like, I would love to have a better relationship of being able to listen to things like feeling powerful, right? Or like these different aspects. And yesterday I shared with some people that I'm very used to what it feels like for my body to be exhausted, right? Like the end of the day, like my feet hurt, whatever, then I know I'm tired. And I'm less active right now. And yesterday I laid down just to listen to something in the sun. And like I woke up 3.5 hours later. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not body tired, but I'm not like muscle tired, but I think my body was holding emotional stress. And there was this different kind of exhaustion that I had a harder time listening to and connecting with.
That's such a great category, Helen. Just the only way we're accustomed to listening to our body is pain or sickness, and wanting to build other positive ways of listening. I love that.
Which I'm sure that you've had. I'm sure that you guys have all experienced, even if it's like you go for a run or you're outside and you feel the sun on your face, or the wind blows and you smell some honeysuckle or something. I think everyone's had moments of like, oh, my body's responding with pleasure, with joy, with peace, with gladness, with hope. But we just don't take the time to like register it. Mm-hmm. It's a discipline. I think it's a discipline to be connected.
I think the other part too is that if you're from the Protestant tradition, is that you're suspicious of incorporating other senses into connection with God at all. Like, so it's so much of Protestantism is reactive to Catholicism. So it's like they have incense, like we don't smell stuff, like that's suspicious. Like Native American people smell stuff, like we're right on the cusp of something dangerous, right? Like there's just such an odd suspicion of like, why can't like what we smell and what we taste and what we hear and how we move be integrated into our connection to God? But like Jenny showed, like no, connection to God just has to go to one tiny part of our brain, which is so incongruent with our theology. We're like, God is vast and unknowable and creator and this direction and time and knowledge, but also you can only interact with God with this one tiny little way of knowing, right? That isn't logical, and yet we backed ourselves into that illogic. So,
not to mention Jesus had a body, and that was the whole deal, was God embodied in an actual body.
it was a big deal.
Was
I
kind of a
feel like
big
if
deal.
God was not feeling bodies, he would have just done Genesis and been like, I don't need the clay thing. Y'all can just be souls cruising around. And he would have been like, it's good. I'm done. But he was like, I'm going to put everybody into these like flesh containers. And I think that that's good. And I mean, think about how weird and insane sex is. Like that business. I mean, I'm always like, he could have made it like a fist bump, like Baby Made. But instead it's like this crazy, intimate, messy, liquidy experience. And God invented that. And yet we think that God is so like insanely uncomfortable with the very things that are like his creation. Like we just have so much kind of like exhaling to do around that stuff.
You reading something?
I am. EFT, what's EFT? I don't know if I know what EFT is.
The tapping.
Oh, like EMDR? Yes. Let's see, Stephanie, can you just hop on and just tell us really quick what those two practices are, just so we know what you're referencing?
Sure, I can do my best. I just started both of them in the last 6 to 9 months. But Splonka, okay, so EFT is basically tapping parts of your body as you speak words of affirmation, or as you are honest with yourself about what you're feeling, even if it's painful, or especially if it's painful, actually. And then Splonka is more rooted in like a Christian perspective. And so it's pretty much EFT with like Holy Spirit, and then someone else kind of guides you through it. That's the best I can do. But yeah, you guys can Google it. And,
Okay. That's awesome. I love that.
yeah, it's great.
That's fantastic.
It's great.
Just reading.
Brandy, what's been your experience? You said you've been connecting with your body through some therapy and it's been really good. How is that different than just talking about issues?
Well, first of all, praise God, I have a Black therapist, which is really helpful. That's a game changer. But one of the issues for me is I grew up with a lot of trauma kind of in every form and like around my life. And Ern and I used to talk about this as like the little box where I keep my feelings. And we've been trying to unlock that a little bit, but the only way that I've been really able to do that super effectively has been by listening to my body. And so when my therapist I'll be saying something, and if you know me at all, I will present information with a lot of clarity, but with no emotion. Like really intense. And one of the things that my therapist has been asking me to do is just to stop and to ask, what is your body telling you right now? Or where are you feeling that in your body? And I'll be like, oh, I feel it in my, like a tightness in my neck and chest. And she'll go, what is your body trying to tell you? And the first few weeks I was like, I don't freaking know. Like, I have no idea. But I'm starting to realize, like, when I share certain stories, or when I talk about certain things, or when I am doing certain things, or am holding my body in a certain way, that there's particular emotional categories that I'm able to kind of tap into. And so I can go like, oh, when my shoulders are up, I feel this way in conflict, or like when my chest is tight, I know that like I actually want to cry, but I don't. But like my heart and brain connection can't get tears to my eyes. And so it's been really helpful to know my emotions with words through listening to my body.
Yeah.
I love that. Hmm.
It's also interesting because I'm a yoga instructor, and so so Scott's saying, so good, Brandy. I guess you can see it. Yeah, heart brains. But I'll teach classes where similar to what Erna was saying, like someone will start crying. I was doing a lot of stuff to open up hips. Hips is where people keep a lot of tension and actually trauma. And we did a class with a lot of hip opening, and this woman just started weeping, and she's like, I don't even know why I'm crying, but I'm crying. And the thing I said was like, I think in this moment, you don't need to know, like your body is releasing what needs to get released. And maybe there's things to learn eventually, but there can be a trust that your body's going to be working that out. You don't always have to have the words or the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because, again, it's like, we're so suspicious of what can't be put into words. You know, it's like even healing, like even experiencing the Holy Spirit, there's just no room for mystery. It's like, well, explain it, like put it in a journal entry that I can read and understand, versus like, there is mystery to how we experience like a fully kind of embodied movement towards healing. I think particularly as I've talked with folks who are queer and grown up in Christian spaces, there's actually been an even deeper like trauma and press to disconnect between like you and your body.
Right.
And so I think needing to be in spaces where even you can't like brain logic it out, but there's just a mystery to saying like, it's good. And the connection between you and your body are good. They're good. They're good. To come back in. I think that's some of the kind of a soul level trauma that we do to folks in this space. And so just needing to allow that reintegration to happen, which you can't always like journal out linearly, but you just have to hold space for that reintegration to happen. Thanks, Stephanie. We're getting close to the end of our time. Anyone else just want to throw just something you're thinking about, or yeah, music, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a great example of it not necessarily being pain, but your body's responding to something. Or it could be pain, it could be sadness, but not necessarily. I mean, even like when you feel a beat, maybe I don't think I'm the only one here, you feel a beat and like something in your body just wants to move to it, it responds.
It's a good example, Karis.
All right, we feel good. Can we bring it to close? Tracy, Jenny, you guys feel good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, well, as always, we love this time. We talk all the time when we're like prepping and debriefing. We're like, life-giving experiences in quarantine are our Thursday times and hanging out with you all. So thanks for just being a part of this community, and thanks for being a part of this conversation. Y'all are just, you're awesome. And I just feel like this is such a sacred thing that we're doing in the midst of so much trauma. So thank you for hanging out with us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the beginning of the theme for the next 3 weeks: breath, body, and play, which I ruined for us because because I'm a ruiner.
It's probably shot now. Don't come, guys. Next week.
So we're going to dig into each one of those in the next few sessions, but we just wanted to have a broader conversation about kind of the disconnect as we move towards practices around breath and play and body. So yay, Brandy. Yay, Josh. We're glad that you're here. All right, everybody. Well, we will sign off, and we will be back again. You guys are awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.
Love you all. Bye.